Welcome to the Reinventing Education podcast. I'm Rob McLeod, not with Brendan O'Leary today. We'll be back together again very soon with another season of the show. We're just wrapping up our few weeks of summer break here. But before we get back into the regular swing of things, we wish to share a conversation that we had with Armin Sieber of the Integrale Tagesschule in Winterthur, Switzerland. Armin has already been a guest on the show in our early days. Brendan and I think the world of this guy, his school, the work that his teachers, parents, and students do together. Armin had shared a document with us called The Future Perfect, 10 Years Later, How Schools Gradually Grew into Potential Development Centers. We had a discussion about this document, and what was interesting about it is that so often in education reform or education development, we talk about what needs to change within schools. And this document was created out of a thought exercise, and Armin will go into more detail about this in the interview. But just to set the context here, this thought exercise was putting ourselves 10 years into the future and looking back at how the world around school may change. We hope you find this conversation as fascinating as we did. When discussing the development of school, reinventing education, all these kinds of things, we often show up with two premises, I think. One is school has a lot more potential we haven't tapped into. And two, school already isn't a good match for the world outside. And I'd say recently, Brennan and I have maybe been playing devil's advocate a little bit with that second premise of, well, maybe it's a better fit than we realize. But what tends to miss from this conversation is the idea of, well, how might the world change into the future that would require a different approach to education? And this is one of the first times I've seen someone in education make that leap out of the school into the world, present an image of the world in the future, and then begin to trail that back to what consequences that might have for school. So maybe just to begin, where did the inspiration for this come from, and what were you hoping to do in this document?
Well, when you're involved in schools and school development, you tend to focus on what is not functioning, what is wrong, and how can we change? And at the same time, you feel helpless because you can't change. Schools change slower than churches. So I sometimes offer to Swiss people, let's start with the Catholic Church. And when this is successfully done, then tackle the school system. So, and then in the same time, we as the school as we are overrun with demands now, especially after this year of pandemic, and psychiatric institutions are in total overload mode. We have desperate parents who are asking for a school place in 2 years because they think we are the only hope. And that's not the truth, but it seems they are so desperate. So what can we do in order to, as a small school as we are, we can't rescue the world. It's not possible. So how can we become effective? How can we encourage? And so the Future Perfect as a solution-focused approach to change is one of my preferred ways. And I was invited by Integral Politics to be a member of the Bildungsgroup. And I proposed, before we start, let's all have our own vision from 10 years backwards, and then find out what is our common core in how we proceed. And maybe the diversity already in this small and very committed group is too large. So many ideas. In order to be to be effective. So let's share the ideas. Well, I thought, okay, now I gave the homework, or I gave the idea for the homework, so I have to do my homework as well. And it was a very important moment to skip on the timeline and all these elements, all these streams, all these ideas, without any critical instance in your brain, no scissors, just write it down, just let it go. And it was really uplifting, writing it and sharing it afterwards with our team in our school as well. So it will have an impact in our school. It seemingly had an impact that I translated it into English, so that you felt somehow attracted to talk about it. I think we need resources. We need our confidence that it is possible to adapt, to change, and not with the idea there is one real perfect approach to education. And it has become broader here in Europe with the movement from Nordic thinkers with the term Bildung. So they adopted the term Bildung in English because education or school doesn't cover. And one of the main reasons for the overarching goal of what I see in this potential development centers is that in schools we usually work with symptom carriers. So we try to mobilize a lot of energy in order to open up possibilities for the future of these young people, of the students. If it would be possible to include parents as carrier of wisdom and at the same time as carrier of doubts and shame and helplessness, so to see that we all are on our path of learning and growing together, then we would be more efficient, definitely more efficient than only focusing on the carriers of the symptoms. And well, you showed pictures of your son during the presentation, and you live your life as a parent, as a father, as a family, in your way, as you are in your consciousness and awareness. And when I look out the window now, here we are. Well, you can't see it. It's a park, and parents are walking with their children, and they're not focused on their children. They're focused on their smartphones. Even with the dogs, so dogs seem to be quite patient with their masters. So there will be an impact. There will be an impact in a couple of years, and it won't be a desirable impact, I suppose. So how can we counterbalance? Accepting that nowadays parents, people are involved with these smartphones, with these virtual devices, and knowing that relationship is the root of confidence to develop and to learn, to grow, to make mistakes and to stumble and fall and get up again. And this should apply for learning systems as well. They should stumble and fall and get up and learn, and not know the answers beforehand, because none of us has visited the future, as far as I know. So we don't drive the DeLorean. We have to stay open and to to take our own personal growth and development in focus, keep it in focus, and that's about the reason I wrote it, and I shared it. Maybe it's inspiring for others as well. And finding acronyms, because in education you always have to have acronyms. It was funny. It was real fun to find some ways. So.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that, Armin, because how many of the acronyms and terms are real ideas that you have and are percolating, and how many of them are kind of made up or just something to, like, a placeholder until we have something such as the Thunberg scale and what are some of the others? Are those real ideas, or are these just things to get us thinking?
Well, for the Thunberg scale, that's not a real thing. And especially that the scale is open upwards and downwards as well. So, yeah, yes. Somewhere the VUCA reinterpretation, I found it somewhere in the net. So for the A, agility could be adaptivity as well. Cocoa was homebrewn.
Yeah. So, well, I guess for me, I wanted to kind of see how seriously you took this vision, and whether you had steps that you had already kind of sketched out to get us there, or whether it was just a dream.
Well, at the end, I sat together with our team, and we tried to find out on a scale from 0 to 10, if this vision is a 10, where are we actually? We are not at 0. And the result was between 4 and 6. And it made clear that in some ways we are running ahead of, or we are trying to keep up with the development of. When I realized where we are headed and what would be necessary to get there, I reached out to networks in order to share and to learn for myself. And it's not about who invented what exactly, and is it a patent or not, but how can we build bridges? How can we build stable, at the same time as flexible bridges between all these movements and developments, and realizing that the sustainability development goals, we all nod and we all know and we all say it's very important. And Swiss people just voted against new legislation to keep on track with CO2. They just voted against banning pesticides. They voted against. So we tell other countries how to develop, and we ourselves, in a political way, the critical mass is not at the point where they understand what their decisions mean for their future, the future of their children. We are not at that point. We need more momentum and more invitations. And so reaching out to others and understanding, for example, the Bildung is the Bildung movement from Lene is powerful. At the same time, only the word Bildung has the danger to exclude, and so how can we take the energy? How can we take the momentum and translate it so not to exclude anyone, anything around the world? And it would be, there's another movement coming from Thomas Björkman and others with the inner development goals. So in order to reach the sustainability development goals, we need first inner development to understand. So inner development goals are more. I think they're translatable in a broader sense than Bildung. But the mindset or the consciousness behind is quite the same.
I'd be curious, could you walk us through, like, maybe for those who are unfamiliar with these movements, like what would be some of the core focuses in the Bildung community and the inner development community? What would be some of the key ideas they're organized around?
Well, the Bildung community, they share a manifesto stating that Bildung, the broader understanding or the basic understanding that the German philosophers had and never realized to 100%, but the idea was there that Bildung is much broader than the military style idea of school. So it's opening up, and it's not bulimic learning. It's growing, and it's personal development as well. So this opening up and this maybe radically changing curricula is something that is behind the Bildung network, and the Bildung network is now preparing to go global. So on September 21st, there will be a global Bildung Day. So far, mostly the Northern Hemisphere. So we see if we accept that the hierarchy of needs is mirroring what our life conditions are, to talk about Bildung has some aspects to be fulfilled before we can talk about Bildung. In the development movement is almost, I think they're related, and somehow you meet the usual suspects as well. So it's very inspiring to see what is happening without the label integral or spiral dynamics. Maybe sometimes they're talking of meta-modern, reading the same books, and they come up with a slightly different concept with their Mondays growth that matters. And again, it's not school. It's not the traditional way of learning, but I see that there's something like a gap opening in the integral world. So either you see it as very important that you contribute to others to reach second tier, or you learn to accept that being human means to be a full rainbow of whatever, and to understand that the next step for each and every person is different, and second tier is not the goal. It's starting to move towards your potential, and within these two movements, I see this mindset and approach, and therefore I feel quite at home there.
You wrote focused on Switzerland in your document, and I couldn't help but notice as you were just discussing that there is a diversity of movements around the world that are emerging that do seem more similar than different, certainly bringing their own unique characteristics and takes on things. I'm curious, do you think 10 years into the future, looking back, that we're going to see more radical systems change on a more local or possibly regional scale, or a handful of countries or a handful of areas, and possibly not in such an international way. Whereas I feel there are a lot of attempts at global movements for educational change or very large scale groups. And I'm curious, do you think some of this is going to actually go the opposite way and become more regionalized and specific to more local contexts?
Well,
or the other way to ask that is, why did you focus only on Switzerland?
Because it was the integral politics for Switzerland. Maybe that. I personally, I'm not focusing on Switzerland. I'm focusing on development. It's different. And I'm focusing on where can I contribute to meaningful change. And I don't see it in the political environment. I don't see it. It's about power and preserving power, and it's too slow. For me, for my lifespan, I can encourage others to pursue these ways of trying to influence. When I see bottom up, inside out is the way to change the system, and we need to change. And we see. I was in contact with teacher development in Lithuania, where the government said within 3 years that they should change the education system into a completely inclusive system. Polls say that about 2/3 of the teachers are already at the threshold of burnout symptoms. So it's not, the answer is not politicians deciding something for an already overloaded system. It's politicians to understand that reducing the complexity, listening to the solutions, to the longings, and to what is already there as a resource in schools would be the answer. And one answer, one extremely powerful answer I got from an exchange where or a conference where someone from Estonia took part. So in Estonia, when USSR collapsed, so they say that it was the revolution. So all these Baltic states had to design their own education system, and Estonia said, well, the curriculum will be given only to 2/3 from the government, and the last third has always to be discussed locally, defined and discussed locally with parents, with teachers, with the students. And this made it possible that Estonian school systems became learning systems from the beginning. It's totally different from the other two Baltic states. And so by reducing to open up resources and confidence, and that's a very nice example to learn from, not having 200 pages. Now, the Swiss curriculum is not printed anymore because it's so huge. It's online. It's an online resource. Overwhelming, but competency-based. Yes, I think listen to the needs of teachers, listening to their longings before they abandon their dreams and their motivation, why they have become teachers. And as you saw, well, there in my future education environment, there would be quite a different way of becoming a teacher, not at the university as it is now. Listening to how you should teach children in a way that is not congruent with the way you teach how teachers should teach. And again, changing universities takes some time.
Yeah, in your piece, you describe schools as potential development centers, and I know in your school you focus on a system of sociocracy, and I wonder whether you could explain a little bit about how that works in your school right now, and how that might be a part of a future school or a potential development center, and maybe that you talked a little bit also about how teachers would be trained. And I think you mentioned a building specialist and expert. I don't know if that's connected. So yeah, could you give us a little bit of a glimpse into what that might look like?
Well, maybe I'll start with the pandemic last year, where we thought it would be important that students had an opportunity to share their fears, their hopes, in an online environment and in a safe space, and maybe moderated by an adult person, or maybe just moderated on their own. The girls wanted to start that. They thought this is a good idea, and they invited specialists from outside when they had questions that arose. And when we came back to regular operation mode last summer, so the boys said, we need a boys' talk as well, because we have questions ourselves as well. So, okay. So in a sociocratic organization, you can have any kind of initiative. So bring it forward and find people who share and support your initiative, and bring it to the school circle. And so they got slots in our schedule for boys and girls talk, and then we found out. They find out. Why don't we have a live talk where we're talking about life, because that's where we are going to live afterwards, and we don't want it separately in terms of gender separated. So they got a live talk. Now it's a fourth talk. It's called Music Talk, and I think Rob, maybe you as well. I don't know about your musical background. That would be a place where I would have been as a student. So they share their music, and they talk about what is happening when they listen, what is alive within them, and what's the meaning of music, and share. So these are all initiatives by the students, and these workshops are initiated and led by students. So I would have liked to take part in the music talk, and I was kindly invited not to assist because they wanted to be on their own. And that's okay. So students are part of, or they contribute to the school development. The parents are part of what is happening, and now for a bit more than 1.5 years, our school board is included in the sociocratic operation mode as well. So we can say from any part of this organization, learning can happen. Every voice can be heard, and at the same time, like the title of a book is, it's one song. It's one song. And sometimes you hear one voice louder than the others, but it's still one song. Yeah. And for the teacher training, I think should start like in Switzerland in healthcare. It's a way to very practical. Just decide education or Bildung or whatever is your professional goal. Then go to one of these institutions and work along with others for 1 or even 2 years. and then start with the questions, start with your experiences, and find out what is needed in order to fully engage in these systems. But don't go to a university to listen to learn by heart about developmental psychology or something like that, and never have made the link that it might be important. It might be important. And there are Swiss people in this developmental psychology, very important, but never realized that it has something to do with real life. So first real life, and then go and go with the questions, and having an answer to why do I want to become a teacher first.
What I keep coming back to is a very, I think someone who's playing with more, trying to give more credit to the current system than I have. I've definitely, in the last few years, been the let's really crap on the system as it is. Education, society, culture. I go back to one of my original points of there's so much more potential here. I think I have this dreamer mentality that likes to escape from the way things are now, imagine some much better future or alternative reality, kind of inhabit there, and then every now and then rudely and abruptly be brought back to what's actually my current context, basically across every domain of my life, just to give you a quick snapshot of me. I'm curious, what, your school says, we're a 4 to 6 already there. What do you see currently, either in your school or in the Swiss system or other of these large, slow changing political systems? What do you see that is out there currently that you take as an encouraging sign that might point toward these fairly radical changes you're talking about in a short period of time?
I think one side effect of crisis is that it's like stepping backwards to get more energy and running up, realizing now that systems are overloaded in psychiatry, in education, and financial system. We'll see what Elon Musk just will tweet. So we are in unstable times, and the answers it is increasingly become clear that our answers from yesterday do not apply to the questions of today. And we don't know the questions of tomorrow. We only know that our answers don't fit. So in that atmosphere of being overwhelmed, if we can generate energy to evolve, then I'm hopeful. And I see it then that the suffering in education system in Switzerland is higher than ever. There were times when we didn't have a full house half a year before the next school year started. So because there was not a demand as it is now, and I see that teachers who left our school and re-entered the public education system were able to support radical changes in these schools within 1.5 or 2 years. They changed. And we have a public school now here in Winterthur that is actually changing its structure into a sociocratic school system. So it can happen, but it happens one after another and it can't be directed from outside. It has to be rooted on the inside, energy and openness. And maybe it's a very good idea not to change. It's not to us to decide what is the right way, but to support people in realizing what could be possible, what could be the next step for them in their context, and if they decide to change, to support this change. I accompanied a couple of schools in Switzerland when the new curriculum was spread. And in some schools, you hear teachers say, well, curriculum 1997 already passed beside me. This one will pass as well. Now I know I just rename what were the goals of my teaching. Now it's the competencies. So I changed. And maybe it's a very good idea not to change. Maybe these are perfect teachers. You talked about it, a blue-orange teacher that was important to you. So who are we to judge what is the best system for whom? We need increasingly adaptive intelligent systems, yes, but start with the ones who are open and share and invite and do not command to change. This will be the opposite. So,
I guess, I wonder if there are some practical steps in that. If someone's listening now and they would like their school to become much more like the kind of place you're describing, they could be a principal, but they could equally be classroom assistant or even a parent at the school. What are some of the practical steps maybe people can do to kind of move their school in that direction?
I think there are many first steps according to what is the actual nature of the school. When I listened to that teacher that left our school and went back to public school system, he encouraged the headmaster to open up finances that the teachers can get a training in solution-focused coaching, and afterwards to include coaching as an element of the task of a teacher, one-on-one coaching. If you do that, if you have the resources, if you get the resources to take this kind of connection seriously, you change the whole system. Another one is our team meetings always end with the so-called diamond round. Teachers are professionals in talking about what is not perfect yet. So our diamond round at the end of every team meeting is now talk about things that succeeded, observations of successful steps and developments, so that when you go out of a team meeting, you feel uplifted and energized, and you are looking forward to open your eyes that next time you have something to tell in that diamond round as well. And if it happens, then the quarter of an hour we reserved for the diamond round is too short. Then people sit there and listen to one another and share the diamonds. So this is a small idea for a radical change in observation. Work on what works, and don't share what does not work, because there are multiple reasons why something doesn't work. But if you feel empowered and by sharing these stories, it can become a different world. And the third element I see when I train with public school teachers is the teacher parent student conference. That is from kindergarten up to the last school year, just hosted by the child, which can be very, very challenging for both or for all persons involved. But if the child is taking the responsibility to really be the host, and at the end of maybe the first 20 minutes, when your son, your daughter competently was talking about developmental steps and successes and problems and challenges, parents need some paper handkerchiefs, because it's the first time they realize that school is about development and not about being judged or put in a drawer. And then finally, at the end of 1 hour, at least 1 hour, the student is asking on a scale from 0 to 10. If 10 means this conference was helpful and very positive, and 0 would be the total opposite. Now, the parents have to start giving a scale position, and we end up usually between 8 and 10. And if this is possible, you don't fear these conferences anymore, because it's not like a place where you judge people and you are being judged from others.
Yeah, we've actually just had ours today at the school, because I'm in an IB school, and one of the parts of the model is the student kind of led conference. And it really is an important part of the year to wrap it up and spend some time talking. Our kids don't have an hour. That would be awesome to see if those kids, they do about 20 minutes, which is a good start. But I think there's room to expand on that. But if I contrast it to what I had in England, which was, I saw all the parents for like 15 minutes in blocks, and the 30 of them in one evening. It's such a contrast. The one thing I keep coming back to, and I know, is the unique nature that you spoke about of having differentiation based on the spiral dynamics kind of levels. I don't want to go back. I think you gave a really good description last time around, but I'd be interested to see how they connect to this idea of the school of the future, of those development centers.
Whether it's spiral dynamics or any other approach in adult development or human development, I think it's important to have a tool for self-reflection, to know who you are, where you are, and what is triggering you, in order to step back and be open for the person in front of you, to accept who he or she is at that moment and to adapt to that. So it's a tool to support adaptive intelligence and letting go of your ego. It's not about making others like you. It's about supporting growth in the other person. And spiral dynamics and the symbols we use are helpful, and it's in our everyday language, and it's all over the place. And we see that more and more, we already talked about that, the importance of purple has grown. So having home, having some like extra family experience, having a place where you feel rooted and welcome unconditionally in this world can be a key that all the other levels above may open up. But without that, without purple in a bright way functioning, we see it is very difficult. So we focus on that as well.
So in my understanding of spout dynamics, purple is often associated with close kinship and like a magical sense of the world. And you've definitely touched on the kinship side. I'm curious if there's this piece of, like I think you've done to some degree in your paper, tried to breathe some of that magic, or magic's maybe like a dismissive term, sort of the mystery of life as well, back into it.
Maybe the term sociocracy is a very cognitive way, but at the same time it goes down to purple. So you have rituals, you have rules. It's not based on power, but it's home. You know, you have a voice. So it's finding approaches and tools that go up and down the spiral as well. It's more than school. It's like family. Some of our students say having a personal coach that spends time with you every week for half an hour to up to 1 hour. Sometimes is more like a parent in a time where you don't know who you are and who to become. And therefore, this can be a purple part of your root in our system. At the same time, your peers are a part of your purple tribe as well. And magic, why not? Yes, sometimes we don't know why things happen, but we don't have pagan gods to pray to.
Near the start, you said that more and more parents are seeing you as your school, as the solution. But I'm curious, what do you think parents are seeing in your school that is so necessary? We've touched on a lot of things, but I'm curious from their take, how are they seeing the school right now and what you're offering?
If there is something like the parent and they function in all the same way.
Or the most common overlapping ideas.
I think humanism first, accepting a human being as he or she is, the longing that your child likes to go to school, and there is not a suffering of the whole family system. When there is hope that this could take place, then our school can be the answer. And sometimes it starts with there's no homework. Yes, there are tasks, but no homework. We read books, the homework myth, for example, and we read the evaluation of Hattie. No, homework is not a key to success. So if your child is diagnosed with ADHD, whatever these letters mean, not one of these children is totally the same as the other one. They are all unique. So if you allow the uniqueness to be seen and to find out together with the child what is the way, the environment that he or she can learn, then it seems like, wow, parents say, can we come to our school? We would have loved to be in a school like that. And that's the point where we start to, potential development centers. Yes, of course, you can come to our school and we grow together. Don't accept it because you're adult, you don't have to learn anything, or you are not allowed to learn or to grow. Just come and join us. And we offer these learnings to the parents on a small scale, but about half of the parents are joining us when we're offering elements of our learning and share our learnings with the parents as well.
That was our discussion with Armin Sieber of the Integrale Tagesschule in Winterthur, Switzerland. If you would like to reach out and connect with us here at Reinventing Education, The best way to do so is via email. It's a long one, reinventingeducationpodcast@gmail.com. All one word, no periods, no underscores, no funny business, just reinventingeducationpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks, enjoy your day, and talk to you again soon.